Good morning, good afternoon, and evening, baseball fans. Welcome back to Barstool Baseball. It is Friday. I am Carl, and I am joined by Chris Castellani, fresh off a red carpet appearance in the Barstool Award Show. It is late Thursday night. We are recording this. It was great to get together in person on Wednesday. Boys were all hanging out. We looked good. You looked great.
Thank you, man. It was honestly, it was as happy, and you've been working here way longer than I have, as happy as I've seen everyone like together in a long time. Like, I think the vibes were there. You know, I know there was some people like KFC was acting like a volcano was about to go off beforehand. I thought everything went great. It was hilarious. Awesome event for content people. Awesome event, everyone behind the scenes as well. It's great. I mean, those Barstool days, those are like just the best days for me. So I loved it. I thought it was fantastic, and I love seeing everyone come together, and great event all around. Yeah.
We only get together for the trivia event in the last couple of years where everybody is together. And even then, people are coming in at certain days and leaving at certain times. And so everybody is kind of together. You can bump into people, but you'll go to a trivia, when we do the national trivia show in New York, and you would come out and you'd say, yeah, well, I didn't see these guys or that guy, or there was a whole group of people you'd miss. Last time was the first time everybody was there together, accessible to each other, all in the same moment, all the content people forever. I sat next to Pirate Simon, and I sat next to Millmore. Like, from my heart to heart, as a lifetime stoolie, a guy who loves this company and like all I've ever wanted to do, surreal moment to be at the 20th anniversary show. And Dave put on an unbelievable show. There were so many good performances. The one thing I want to call out before we get into today's Barstool Baseball show is Frank the Tank came on last week and had a great time. We were talking about the Mets, and he opened up in a very intellectual capacity. And the people that saw that clip going around yesterday, and he talked about studying broadcasting and journalism in college to get here and how hard it is. And I just want to echo those sentiments. There's been so many times and like, dude, there's no way this is ever going to happen. And there's been so many ups and downs in my own personal Barstool career. There's in across this company for so many people and everything. And it was just a really strong emotional night. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody listening that's followed this, that knows me, that's followed a part of whatever's gone on with Barstool over the 20 fucking years. Thank you guys so much. Like, I left that event last night so empowered to be a part of this place. And we're just very lucky. So thank you, everybody. That opening comments. Thank you.
Yep. No, I'll just add to that and say that the Frank moment and just that the event as a whole is a reminder of what we've always been as a company, which is we are the ultimate underdog story. We are the voice for the voiceless, the island of misfit toys, and seeing everybody come together and seeing Frank happy and seeing Dave happy and seeing the vibes back with him owning the company again, an elite day for sure. We do not take that shit for granted ever. It was awesome.
Now, you talk behind the scenes, guys. One of a famous behind the scenes guy at Barstool Sports is Meek Phil, and he sent out a text message last night, like 2 o'clock in the morning, and Shohei Ohtani's UCL. Now, there's been all the reactions out there. You wrote a blog, the Angels are officially something. They're bad. Now, what I would like to concentrate on, though, crazy moment, great reaction from Phil. The dialogue, I woke up, I was like, holy shit, this is crazy stuff going on. Guys are firing takes left and right. The one thing I'm really interested in with the Shohei news is the impact on free agency. Because we've talked in programming before, $65 million a year, $60 million a year. If you gave him $70 million a year, long term, 10 years. So what do you think a UCL injury like this, even though he can hit, he's probably going to be able to hit, depends on what the surgery schedule's like. Guys have come back. What do you think this means immediately for his free agency this offseason?
It means whatever plans he may have had about the potential deal need to be crumbled up and thrown in the trash. He's going to get a massive deal because he's an elite hitter. He is one of the 5 to 10 best hitters in the entire sport. And as we've talked about before, what Shohei Ohtani brings to you just as an individual brand is, that's worth the money alone. But we've said it a million times. What makes Ohtani the most appealing free agent of all time is he's essentially 2 great players in one. Regardless of whether or not you think he comes back to where he was as a pitcher, next year he will not be that guy. He will not be pitching next season. So it grossly impacts his with free agent status. One thing that was brought up in our group chat that I think is possible, he's going to get a unique deal no matter what. It wouldn't shock me if whatever contract he gets is very incentive based going forward, where, yeah, I mean, we want you back as a pitcher in 2025, but you need to hit certain amount of innings limits, certain number of strikeouts in order for you to make X amount of money. He'll make his money as a hitter, but I think the idea of him being that generational two-way hitter, or two-way player, I'm sorry, is it's up for grabs right now. Now, he'll always have that special piece in baseball history, but the fact that he was able to retain this for this long is a testament to his ability. But it's sad. It's sad that, he will not make it to free agency without this looming over his head.
Sad is indeed the case.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's looking for money, it's sad. He's still going to hit a colossal amount of home runs. The question is, like, if he goes and has the surgery then, and then he's not immediately available next year, then does he still seek a long-term deal or a shorter-term deal? I think there could be some incentives, but I always feel like incentives are for older guys that need them in their deals. Like, I don't think an incentive thing comes in where it's like, hey, 3 years, $200 million. I think that's off the table now, though. If he can't pitch next year, then I think you have to remove the 10-year $650 million. Is that
absolutely
right?
So then absolutely, yeah.
Now here's an interesting thing. Would Ohtani be interested in picking? To me, this is bad. I go, here's an interesting thing. What's interesting is, no, I'm sincere about the fact that he could look at an organization and say, how good are you with medical returns, and does he now go play for a team that maybe he would not have entertained for his long-term free agency for a couple years? A lot of options become available now because of the UCL, or because of the UCL injury. I think there's a lot of teams out there that had taken themselves out that would be like, we're not in this, that are immediately in this now.
No, that's a really good point, mate. Because really, I had it narrowed down to about 3 teams with probably a 4th mystery team maybe throwing their hat in the ring at some point. That's all changed now. There are multiple teams that probably came into this saying, can't afford Ohtani, don't want to spend the money on Ohtani, that will be looking to be like, well, Ohtani the hitter, we can probably afford. Ohtani the two-way generational talent, I'm not so sure about that. I think as much as it pains me to see him injured because he is one of one, I actually think it will make his free agency search, so to speak, actually more interesting, because I think you're going to have more teams throwing their hat in the ring here. And so which will be a lot of fun, but it sucks for him as an individual, but as a fan, it'll be neat to see, who's going to be willing to dish it out now that, he's dealing with this lingering issue.
And last point on Ohtani, and just backing this up, is if I'm a GM, say I'm with the Marlins, I'm with the Rays, just the Diamondbacks, calls you'd never make in Ohtani's camp. Offers you'd never make to Ohtani's camp are now on the table, where guys can go back and be real creative and strategic. I like what you're talking about, the incentives. So I think it does. Interesting for Ohtani in the free agency market. I have a terrible situation. The Angels fucked up bad. We told them they should have been selling from the very beginning. Terrible situation that's going on with the Los Angeles Angels. Again, you detailed it in a blog. But for purposes of Shohei, not as sad as the injury could be. It could be worse. I mean, we're still talking about a guy who's going to clear $750, $800 million in his career earnings. Just a tremendous specimen.
I would argue, real quick, the Trout injury is sadder, because I think Ohtani will remain healthy as a hitter and will continue to have he's still in his prime. Whereas Trout, this chronic back problem, it scares me. How many more seasons? Really, I mean, I'm putting how many more elite seasons, if any, does he have left? That's even sadder to me. But yeah, it's just shitty all around.
Yeah, he should be somewhere else. The Angels should do something about that and figure out how to get him somewhere else.
It'll be a thank you trade. They'll have to eat so much money, but we're reaching a point where it's like, you can't. I mean, him playing in an empty ballpark at 35 is going to be rough. You don't want to reach that point. So yeah, they're getting there.
We had a great segment last week, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Rangers versus Orioles, because that was topical coming off the power ranking show. we wanted to just break it down roster, go in position by position. I think I ended up calling it Roster Wars in the YouTube thumbnail graphic, so that's what we're calling this segment now. It's Roster Wars, and this is just a good exercise because we're going to be doing a lot of this going into the playoff time, like matching up teams and giving our predictions and stuff. And great feedback. We asked the audience. We're doing Rangers Orioles now because we see them at the top of the American League. And someone reached out and said, can you do Mariners and Blue Jays? Because they're sitting around the same spot. They played each other last year in the playoffs. These are two talented rosters. They kind of find their gears, lose their gears. The Mariners have been super hot. The Blue Jays have been the fucking Blue Jays.
They're inconsistent as ever. I mean, the Mariners, this run by the Mariners is ridiculous. I mean, 33-14 in their last 47 games. I mean, they've just been on an absolute roll. But yeah, I think these are two very interesting teams to compare because you have one team that has been good all year but sort of stagnant with the Blue Jays, and you have one team that was, an afterthought 100 games in that has been so insanely hot that I feel like their trajectories are kind of opposite, but yet they find themselves in very similar standing when it comes to the playoff, Chase.
So let's get into it. We started with catcher last week. Let's just spend a couple minutes. We're going to go position by position, Mariners and Blue Jays. I like starting with catchers because I think the catcher is just one of the most important. I mean, I'd say it's the most important position player. Someone could argue about the shortstop, but man, do I love a good catcher. That's why we start here. It's Cal Raleigh and Alejandro Kirk. If we did catching tandems and you take in Danny Jansen, and historically I would say, of course, the Blue Jays because they have those two guys. But I'm really just looking at the starters when you roll out and you just go head-to-head. We're going to do some battle. And Cal Raleigh is a switch hitter with power that's had a couple big moments, and a young guy they drafted in the third round, quickly accelerated, has taken on every ounce of responsibility with that tremendous young pitching staff, and he's carrying a big fucking stick. And as he gets older and the plate presence gets better, the contact rate should get better. But right now they go head-to-head. I love Cal Raleigh. I really do. He's one of my favorite catchers in baseball.
Grossly underrated.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking, this is a 26-year-old hitting catcher. He's going to hit a quiet 30 home runs in the catcher position, at a big ballpark in Seattle. You brought up some huge moments last year in the postseason, the walk-off home run to send him to October. I like him. I think he's a good leader. I like the pop in his bat. Yeah, and it's not to say Kirk has been awful. Maybe he has not lived up to he definitely has not lived up to the expectations that he had set for himself following last year's All-Star campaign. But yeah, no, this is an interesting one. Cal Raleigh is one of those guys. Every time I look at that Baseball Reference page, and I've always liked him, but I just go, God damn, why doesn't Cal Raleigh get more love here? He's a very, very good at his position for as a hitter. Yeah.
Now, if we take a tandem, I mean, Danny Jansen's so good. Alejandro Kirk's only 24 years old too, but he is. It's the step down this year.
Yeah,
that's what hurts me is because he's young and he's been so good as a young player. I mean, coming into the season, I think he had a career OPS plus around 125, 130. He's at 85 this year. It's been tough. And this is his season when, man, the Blue Jays could, it would be a huge benefit if he was at last year's level. Going back to Cal Raleigh, too, though, I maybe made it sound too disparate or too spread out from the beginning. This is much closer than I'm saying it. If Kirk is playing, slightly above average this year, then I might be leaning in with Alejandro Kirk because I love the ball to bat skills. I think he's very unique. But Cal Raleigh swinging the power behind the dish, working with that pitching staff. He's been, my understanding, has been great. Another good thing to consider, Scott Service, career catcher. I love having a career catcher working with a good young catcher like that.
Fair point. Yeah.
So we're comfortable Cal Raleigh over Alejandro Kirk?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Fuck, man, I would not have guessed that at the start of the season, but here we are at the end of the season. Like
he's had a good year.
Because Kirk, and last thing, I wish Clemmer was here to do like the Hall of Fame candidacy, but Alejandro Kirk last year as a 23-year-old catcher hit 285, was an all-star, a silver slugger, had 134 hits in 139 games. This is when you start talking about like, hey, could he be one of the better hitting catchers of his generation? Again, down this year. We want to go over to first base. This is a fucking slam dunk. Dunk.
Yes. We got Ty France for the Mariners going up against Vladdy Jr. Ty France, you talk about another guy that's taken a minor step back from where he was a season ago, and I think that much of the Mariners' struggles in the first half of the season were because you had multiple players that were really solid for them a year ago take steps back offensively. I think that there is understandably a very large contingency of people that think Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is overrated. And I'm not saying I don't disagree, but here's what I think is going to happen with Vladdy Jr. I'm going to call this Bryce Harper syndrome, where he went through the same shit, where there's going to be a large section of people who are going to be so adamant that he's overrated that he's going to end up coming full circle and becoming underrated again. Like, do you remember that time when, like, because he wasn't Mike Trout, there were a million people who were like, oh, dude, Bryce Harper's so overrated. Can't stand him. It's like, he's like 24 and he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Now, I'm not saying Vladdy's there yet. The numbers should be better. He's still a ground ball machine, but we're talking about a first baseman with who's durable as hell, 18 homers right now, 70 plus RBIs in the season. Numbers should be up, but if we're just comparing positions here between these two, yeah, I mean, you multi-time All-Star already. He's still really fucking young too. I mean, I understand there's some concern from Blue Jays fans. I don't know if he's hit his prime yet.
Well, here's the concern is real-time concern. He's 24 years old, 3-time All-Star, obviously tremendous power. He's got a 361 slug in August, a 410 slug in July. He's been terrible in the second half. He only has 1 home run in August. And this is really a time where, like, nut up, please, Vladdy.
For sure. Yeah, and it's also worth noting the huge year he had 2 years ago, so many of those home runs were at that minor league park that they were playing in because of the COVID year. He has not been a productive hitter at Rogers Center. It is bizarre. They moved the fences in for him for that offense so the ball could fly. Maybe that's a hitting coach issue because there seems to be multiple guys on that team that can't lift the ball for some reason. But he's still a productive hitter. And more consistent than what Ty France has given the Mariners this year.
Ty France, though, I do want to give him some credit. He's a player's player. Players love him. But one of my favorite characteristics of a baseball player is how well liked or received or respected you are by peers. And my understanding is that Ty France is at the top of the list without being a superstar. One of those guys people just fucking thank. Good for him for being an everyday big leaguer. Tons of respect. An undersized first baseman. And by no means is he, like, as a Cubs fan, I would love to have Ty France at first base at the start of the season. That would have been great. I mean, we had to go through 3 guys to get to Cody Bellinger and Mike Tauchman. I mean, we had to go through 3 first basemen. So I don't want to disparage Ty France too much. He's an everyday American League first baseman. He earned it. He hits all this shit. It's like we're just putting you up against Vlad Guerrero Jr., who, even though he's having a bad second half, we'd be crazy people to say that the Mariners have an edge at first base. The edge is clearly to the Toronto Blue Jays at first base.
For sure.
Which I think also exists at second base. So if we go over to second base, it's Whit Merrifield. Now, who's playing a lot of second since they DFA'd Colton Wong?
They've kind of switched it, but mainly it seems like Jose Calabaro has been their kind of mainstay at second base. It was Colton Wong for a while. Colton Wong was having, this is not an exaggeration, one of the worst offensive seasons ever. I mean, they had to cut ties with him. Calabaro's been fine. I mean, 711 OPS, but, I think that Whit Merrifield, like you said, clear advantage here. Whit Merrifield's one of those players at this stage in his career. He's found a perfect spot in Toronto because I don't think Whit Merrifield, at least anymore, is a guy that is, he's not a 3-hole hitter. He's not even really, I don't know, a great leadoff hitter, but you put him kind of in the bottom half of a lineup. He's going to put together a really good at-bat. He's going to put the ball in play. He's a very scrappy player, and he collects a lot of hits. And a versatile defender as well. So, yeah, I think there's clear advantage with Merrifield there.
Yeah, I have it pulled up here, and we've got, for Toronto, Whit Merrifield's got 237 plate appearances. Now, can you talk a little bit about Biggio? He's got 121 plate appearances as a team in a second base unit. What's currently Biggio's career outlook based on the hype and where you stand now?
I mean, I think there's a spot for him in the league, but I just don't think there's a spot for him really as an everyday starter anymore. I think he had that one good year when he came into the league. I think that there was a little bit of smoke and mirrors. Batted ball data wasn't always great. Obviously comes from a baseball background, but I think they're going to have a decision to make with him here at some point because the bat just has not been consistent enough. He'll be a frustrating player because he'll show flashes of it, flashes of power, flashes of a consistency, but then every so often you'll see that, a cold streak come by. Toronto's in kind of a weird spot, and I think he's reflective of that. They don't really know what to do with him at this point. I think it's a big reason why they went out and got Merrifield and why he's turned into kind of that everyday guy for them.
That's a great take, Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you. That's exactly what I was looking for, because the way Biggio's developed is a perfect analogy to the way the Blue Jays have developed since he came up. Now, he's 28 years old.
I was about to say he's 4 years older than Vladdy.
And he's way older than Vladdy, Kirk, Bo. We're going to talk Bo in a second, but he was kind of the first guy up. Terrible situation, because I shouldn't say terrible situation, but I don't know if Blue Jays fans necessarily saw him being this bad after his debut. He was outstanding, and the idea of this,
a very good rookie year. Yeah.
Now, again, the Seattle Mariners, we're talking about Caven. Caven's not even, like, Whit Merrifield's the second baseman we're talking about for the Blue Jays, but the Mariners have had so much problems at second base. I remember it was at Adam Frazier last year, and they traded for him. He wasn't playing anywhere. When you say Colton Wong was one of the worst, Colton Wong registered quite literally one of the worst. If he played every day and they just ran him out there every day, it would have gone down in history as one of the worst seasons.
For sure. Yeah, and what's weird is his defense fell off too. I mean, he was always an elite middle infielder. Even that fell off. So yeah, I mean, they were at the deadline. They didn't even ship him. They just cut him. I mean, that was rough. But
now, what do you got here? Shortstop is much closer, I think, than people realize. It's gonna be. Is it going to be? Is it Bo Bichette? It's Bo Bichette versus J.P. Crawford.
Yes, I think J.P. Crawford, again, wildly underrated. I think there's, they love him in that clubhouse. He's been a great defender for them at short, but the bat's it's been consistent enough this year. I'm not going to say he's this level, but there's at least as a defender, there's a little bit of Andrelton Simmons, like in circa 2017 in him, where you're going to get to the end of the year and be like, wait a minute. J.P. Crawford had a 5 WAR last season. Like, it's just, he's very quiet with the numbers, but the analytics community really likes him. With that said, I love Bo Bichette. And I don't know if I've said this actually on here before, but in 2017, when I was still at Central Michigan, I interned for a summer with Lansing Lugnuts when Bichette and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. were on the team. And Bo Bichette always impressed me more than Vladdy did. Because if Vladdy had a higher ceiling, more power, Bichette would just rip singles every single at bat. And that ability to just put the ball in play and be something of a free swinger while also understanding the strike zone has made him a very effective hitter at the big leagues. I mean, we've talked ever since Miggy did it, like, who's the next guy to get to 3,000? And we got a long ways to go, long ways. But Bichette is 25 years old, man, made his debut 4 years ago. And even with the injuries, is still or the injury he had this year, is still leading the league in hits consistently. Is he an elite defender? If we're talking pure defense, J.P. Crawford probably has the edge. But I really like Bichette. I've always liked Bichette. He's a fun player to watch, smart player, good base runner. And it just adds a lot to a ball club. Yeah, a clear advantage here for Toronto.
If we're talking defense only, I don't really know if that is a comparison. If we're talking defense only, then J.P. Crawford's significantly better. Here's a crazy split between these two. Bo Bichette's walk rate, 4.1% this year. J.P. Crawford, 15.3%.
Yeah.
We're talking about two completely different offensive players. Now, J.P. Crawford has a 122 OPS plus. Bo Bichette has a 132 OPS plus. So now we're talking about marginal upgrade in offense against against defensive positioning and advantages without shifting, which is a huge. I mean, this is where I start to get. I know people are going to call me crazy if I'm a manager and I'm rolling out for 162. Give me J.P. Crawford, like give me J.P. Crawford's consistency, but Bo's so good offensively.
Yeah. I also think Crawford is having his best year right now too.
He's at his prime. He's in his fucking prime.
Yeah. Whereas that's what scares me about Bichette is I don't know if he's entered his yet. You know what I mean? I mean, as good as he's 25 fucking years old. So yeah.
So how do we want to do this roster? Like the ultimate decision then for this roster wars is: are we doing a playoff series? Are they playing each other right now? Is this over a 5-year thing? Fuck that. Fuck a long-term
No, I
projection.
can't. No, yeah, I'm saying
Yeah,
that's a
we're
good
doing
point.
that
I'm saying
bullshit.
right now, right now for
Right
this season.
now,
Yeah.
Thursday night. We're recording this Thursday night, August 24th. This is out on. Subscribe to the page, by the way. Please appreciate it.
Mhm.
So we're doing it right now. If they play each other right now, but we're considering everybody's healthy. So these are some assumptions. So it's like Boba Fett. But JP Crawford deserves every ounce of thought I've put into it, and he's earned the
For sure.
right for me to kick the tires on this. But Boba Fett's like Hall of Fame type stuff.
Yeah, yeah, very sneaky good. Yeah. So we're on to third base now, right?
Yeah.
I think this is another one that will have a distinct Blue Jays advantage. And I like Eugenio Suarez and think that he's been inconsistent as hell, but it seems like every 2 or 3 years he'll have a monster year. Huge year last year, huge year with the Reds where he in 19, I believe, where he hit like almost like close to 50 home runs. Has fallen off this season, though he's been better in the second half. But you have Matt Chapman, who, while the bat I don't think will ever be where it was in 2018, 2019, remains a darling of the analytics community because he's an elite defender. I mean, he's not Arenado territory, but he's way closer than people think at that position.
And then the gap between Machado and Chapman is significant. Significant, and I love it's way less significant between Arenado and Chapman than people realize.
For sure. I mean, he's a multi-time Gold Glove winner, tons of range at that position. We're talking about today, right? And right now with the season he's having, you got to go Chapman. I think because of the free agent market, I think someone is going to grossly overpay him. And hey, go chase your bag, do what you got to do. But excellent player. Always enjoyed watching him. He was fantastic in Oakland. He's fit in very well in that lineup, and he's given him a great season this year.
I'm terrified that the Cubs would go give him a ton of money. Now, the difference between Matt Chapman and like as he ages and a Justin Turner is really more in the offensive approach.
Yeah.
He's having a great season, 30 years old, hitting in the middle of the Blue Jays lineup. Grinder, tough looking baseball player. Just a real old school throwback in Matt Chapman. I don't know how well that guy's going to age. Plays his dick off. 151 games in 2021, right. 155 games in 2022. Going to play a full season this year. He's just out there busting his ass He's only played full seasons in the big leagues. The wear and tear on Chapman in the long run is probably going to get to some point. He's a great ball player right now. I would be terrified to see the Cubs come in and give him like one of those 5-year, $130 million contracts. Someone else should do it. He's a fine ball player. He's earned every single one of those dollars. This is a subjective thing as a fan. As I look at Chappie over the next however long he's got left, that's a tough skill set to carry as you get older. And I mean, sure, Arenado's gonna be saying the same fucking shit, man.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, we're clear here on. No, do you want to say anything about Eugenio Suarez? I don't think we need.
I said what I need to say. Yeah.
And if a Mariners fan has a problem with this, and this is really leaning into the strengths as we're going to get in this, we can go to the outfield now. Let's just round up the outfield. I mean, there's no chance anybody's taking Kevin Kiermaier, the pride of Parkland College. Go Cobras. No one's taking Kevin Kiermaier over Julio Rodriguez. Julio Rodriguez is probably winning the center field battle against everybody.
Yeah. That's a fair. And you know what's scary about that too is that until this week, J-Rod's numbers offensively from a production standpoint were actually down from where they were a year ago. You can fix that by going 17 for 22 or whatever the hell that stretch he had. I mean,
he raised his batting average 25 points in 4 games, or 22 points in 4 games. It was from 252 to 276, or 4 games.
And we take advantage of this stuff. 22 years old, Julio Rodriguez. I mean, my hot take here is that, well, there's better players obviously in baseball than J-Rod. I don't know if there's been a player that has had the immediate impact on the franchise that Julio Rodriguez has had on Seattle. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that the last time the Mariners made the postseason without him on the roster was 2001. He came in right away. There was that awesome video when it was announced he made the opening day roster of Scott Service saying, "We want J-Rod Show. Like, be you, come here, be yourself," because they know this guy's a generational talent. This is probably the easiest one on the list to go with, I would say, in terms of just overall separation. Not to say that Kiermaier out and set. In fact, Kiermaier's had a really solid year. He's actually got the offensive production way up. We're talking about a franchise player in Julio Rodriguez.
I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest looking outfielders I can ever remember.
Yeah, he's fun to watch, man.
The torso, everything about him. The body's beautiful. He's just a big, thunderous approach. Middle of the order hitter that plays center field is one of the coolest things in baseball, because so many times you're finding a guy center field. All right, you can lead off, you can hit at the bottom of the lineup, because the emphasis on being able to go down and catch it is just so fucking important. Or you can get a tough guy like a Brandon Marsh who can grind out at bats and give you slightly above average. And Curtis Granderson, fucking unicorn. Dexter Fowler in his prime, unicorn. So when you can get offense, and we're talking about like Curtis Granderson and Dexter Fowler. Curtis Granderson in his prime was a 35-35 guy, as close as you can get to the 40-40 club without being a consistent 40-40 guy. And like Julio Rodriguez is so much fucking better than Curtis Granderson ever was, and it's just not even a comparison. And I'm sorry to disparage Curtis Granderson. I'm trying to draw that's how good Julio Rodriguez is. That I would look at Dexter Fowler in his prime and be like, sorry, pal. Give me the 22-year-old Julio Rodriguez. He's just that dynamic and athletic. Now, do we want to do Dalton Varsho as the left fielder? Sorry, Kevin Kiermaier, great player too. As good as you can get as a runner-up. I'm taking Kiermaier.
Yeah. No, he's had a great year. He's had a great year. That was a good pickup for them. I would say let's go. Yeah, Varsho's in left for the Blue Jays.
Let's go, Jared.
Yeah, even though he's on the IL. Okay. Yeah, then Kelnick. This one's you got to go Kelnick. I mean, Varsho has not had a good year for them. And honestly, that trade was a little bit baffling to me, to be honest, because I got what the Blue Jays were going for, where they felt like, we got a ton of power hitting right-handers in the lineup. We need to be a more athletic team. So they went out and got Varsho. But you're talking about they went out and got a guy who has had really one solid season. And, you kind of break up the core a little bit. You worry about, what that does to a clubhouse. Not to say he's an awful player. He's still a solid defender, capable of hitting for power, but he's just lacked any sort of consistency. Now, as weird as it sounds, the Mariners have gotten red hot with Kelnick on the IL. In fact, I remember us doing a segment being like, with Kelnick out now long term, like, what does this mean for the Mariners? They found a way to turn around. But even before that, he had that red hot first month. Kelnick was a good story. He was having a solid year. He was called up. He was sent down after being acquired in the Mets trade. He's found a way to find some kind of consistency. I don't think he'll ever be a star, but he's definitely a 140 game a year guy when healthy. Capable of hitting for power, putting up good numbers, and by all accounts, well liked in the clubhouse as well. So you got to go him.
He's 23. He's 23.
He's young, Jesus.
Bro, he was in AAA. Did he even go to AAA? No, he was in AA at 19. He was in AAA in 2021. I mean,
Jesus. And he's killed minor league pitching, because that was always what was annoying about
30
him.
games.
Yeah,
he played 30 games in AAA, and he had a 624 slug. He cannot be in the minor leagues. He's way too fucking good. So this is one of those rare cases of a young guy who's just so talented for the minor leagues. There's no amount of like, well, this, he can't hit the change and the slider combination. Like, no, he can hit the comp. What the problem is, it's just the uptick in big league talent in the mound. And he has to make his adjustments at the big league level in real time. And he did it this year till getting hurt. I still hold out, like 4 years from now, if he was swatting 40 home runs, I will not be surprised. I'm not saying he will. I'm saying I won't be surprised, because he's that young, and already the strides he took. Him being a part of the Mets organization, just quick step back. I mean, you could not ask for a worse pairing between prospect an organization.
Yeah.
A young high school kid from Wisconsin played like 25 games a season. Like he didn't really even like high school ball was. It's like we're talking about a kid from Florida who was born and bred for this shit. It's not Jackson Holiday. We're talking about a guy just like straight off a dairy farm into fucking Flushing. No, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I know
Yeah,
he never
no,
played for the Mets.
I didn't
So
realize he was that young.
nice kid, nice Midwest kid too. We got to stand by our. I know you don't fuck with you don't fuck with the Big Ten and bowl season the way I do, but we got to stand with our Midwest high school baseball draftees.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt.
All right, so Kellenic and left, who out and right?
Okay, so we got Teoscar for the former Blue Jay, Teoscar Hernandez for the Mariners. Out and right for the Blue Jays, obviously George Springer. Okay, this one's really tough for me. I've always really liked George Springer. I mean, loved him as a postseason hitter. I love great leadoff guys. Now, I know he's not a leadoff guy anymore, but when he was with the Astros, I just love, like, when a game can be 1-0, 3 pitches in, like, I love that shit. It's such an advantage to have.
You just love the Astros when he was on those Astros teams.
I liked him almost as much as anybody. I thought he was a special talent. Yes, you are correct. You are correct. But when the Blue Jays signed him, I liked that deal too. I wanted the Tigers to make a run. I knew they wouldn't, but I've always thought he's a talent. The numbers have fallen off. 724, I believe, OPS right now this season. More strikeouts. Defensively, he's not what he used to be. Now, Teoscar Hernandez has put up better numbers from an offensive standpoint. He's been more durable. I mean, I don't want to plead the fifth, but I want to get your mindset on this before I make a decision, because I'm genuinely split. I could be swayed either way.
Yeah, so I think this is one of these cases where we need to be big boys and really think about this.
Right.
We can't just like lean in and say like, well, it's fucking George Springer. They're both what? Let's see. Teoscar Hernandez is 30. George Springer is
30. He's older than people. He's like 32 or 33.
Yeah, he's turning 34.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that dip is real.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real just kind of getting older. Has played a ton of games. And again, he's a college player drafted out of UConn in the first round, so he wasn't in the big leagues till he was probably 23 making his big league debut. I think Teoscar's played his way into it.
Yeah.
Slightly. Who's got more power? 434 slug versus 397 slug. I mean, George Springer has a sub 400 slugging percentage and a premium position for that. Not to say Teoscar Hernandez. Who would you rather have be swiping a bag right now? None of them fucking run.
Yeah, I know. If I had to choose, I'd say Teoscar, because I worry so much about Springer's durability. Like, I don't want Springer.
Springer's 16 of 20 this year in stolen bases. Teoscar Hernandez is 6 of 8. Fuck.
Yeah. Okay.
That's probably why he's got more wins above replacement, though. That's probably the only reason why George Springer is a 1.9 on Baseball Reference, and Teoscar is a 1.8. I'm going to take Teoscar. I'm going to vote for Teoscar. I've seen the best of George Springer. I've already seen it, and that's not what I'm looking at right now, and that's my final vote on George Springer.
I'm with you as well. I think this might be the one where we get the most pushback, but we're going with what we've seen this year and where we go right now. This isn't 2019. I'm going to go Teoscar as well. Yeah.
Just recap, we've got Cal Raleigh behind the dish, Vlad. We have an all Blue Jays infield. We just basically have Cal Raleigh, a catcher. We have Julio Rodriguez in center. We have an all Mariners outfield.
These teams really are even, man. Goddamn. Yeah, and it'll be interesting. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the pitching lines up too, because I think we're going to get a lot of pushback regardless of where we go with the rotation and with the bullpen.
Well, I think the rotation is. I'm taking the Mariners 1,000 out of 1,000 times. I think Luis Castillo goes toe to toe with Kevin Gossman, and then I think after that it's a floodgate versus the Blue Jays. I don't get the fuck out of here.
I'm with you completely. I think a lot of people will disagree though, because I think that Kirby and Gilbert I think a lot of people still don't know how good those guys are, especially Kirby. Like, George Kirby doesn't walk anybody. And he's a young pitcher who throws in the upper 90s. Like, that's a phenomenal trait to have. The one issue I have with the Blue Jays, and they have a good rotation. Barrios has had a solid year. Kikuchi's looked good. Ryu, since when he was came off the IL, looked solid. But Gausman is a 1. After that, it's like a collection of solid number 3 starters. It's meaning to me, I don't know how much I could trust these guys in big game scenarios. I have seen George Kirby shove in October. He did last year. Luis Castillo, I just think Luis Castillo's the man. I think he is one of the 10 best pitchers in baseball. It is bizarre to me how much he goes overlooked. The guy throws 100 through 47 fucking consecutive fastballs against the White Sox a few nights ago. I think that those 3, they scare the hell out of me in a playoff rotation, and they're young too and durable. I just like that trio a whole lot. Not to say I think the Blue Jays rotation couldn't get really hot in October either. Like I said, Barrios had a good year as kind of their second guy, and they've needed him with Manoah falling off. But I like that top end of the Mariners rotation a whole lot.
There's some very good pitching staffs in baseball, some very good starting pitching staffs in baseball. The Seattle Mariners are one of them. The Toronto Blue Jays are not. I think if you were looking at offensive lines, you're looking at fucking secondaries in the NFL. It's just very easy to categorize them. Like, I'd much rather have this group than that group. And for me, it's a Seattle Mariners against these guys. It's not even close against the Blue Jays. Now, if Alek Manoah isn't a complete pile of shit, this is a very, very layered conversation. But he has been terrible with the pitch clock. Now, if he shows up next year in spring training, he's lost 30 pounds, he's ready to go, the mental health is there, whatever's missing right now is there, that's devastating. But in the back end, it's like Robbie Ray's been out. We're not even talking about him. The fact that they've been able to just supplant him easily. Bryce Miller has been interesting in his debut. Chris Flexen's out. I know they're not like necessarily a full strength pitching staff. They're so deep that they're just so deep. I don't know. And Luis Castillo's, I'll take him head to head against, unfortunately in a playoff matchup, I would take him head to head against Kevin Gausman. They're both friends of the program.
Yes.
They're both good guys. Yeah. I like Castillo's competitiveness. What about the relievers? Now, what about the relievers? This is one of these situations. The numbers here are close enough we can argue. The Mariners, were they selling off Paul Sewell? That was a great story where they blew fucking 2 or 3 games in a row after they traded their closer, and then they just went on this run. Where do you see these bullpens stacking up, Chris?
I think the Blue Jays with Romano as their closer is more top-heavy. I think people may disagree with me on this, but I think that the Mariners is a lot deeper. I think that they, it seems like they've locked down a closer right now, but I think that they have several guys very capable of locking down games, whether it's Topo, whether it's Matt Brash. Munoz has emerged as their guy. You have multiple guys like Taylor Saucedo, former Lansing Lugnut, who's kind of been a long relief guy who's given them some really good innings this year. Also right now, and I don't believe this has changed necessarily, but I could be wrong. It has changed, but Jordan Romano's had, been on the IL once this year as well. Good bullpen. I also think sometimes bullpens are as good as their manager, and I trust Scott Service's bullpen management more than I trust John Schneider's.
That's a good transition.
Going in for the rest of the season.
Well, I agree wholeheartedly with that. I think Scott Service is just I think he's very much ahead of John Schneider. Although we're going to get to that in a second. I do like Schneider playing the fucking going out and throwing a BP for his boys.
Yeah.
In the home run derby. I don't know if I made a big enough deal about how sweet I thought that was, but for the relievers, I want you to. Why does Baseball Reference tell me that the collection of the relievers for the Toronto Blue Jays is significantly better than the collection of relievers for the Mariners? Is that because of Romano and Swanson, or what is that?
Yeah, well, Mays has had a phenomenal year. I mean, this is very close. This might be the one I look back on and say, God, I probably could have gone the other way. And I know we're basing it on now, and this is my issue with the Blue Jays, is just I've seen the numbers are always objectively good, and yet I've seen so many instances in which it's nuts on the table and they fall apart. Like it's one of those instances with bullpens especially. The numbers matter, but I I've seen good bullpens or, bullpens that had good numbers fall apart in a lot of big situations. I've seen Romano blow a lot of saves. Last year they had, a 7-run lead in a game against the Mariners in October. I know it's probably a little bit unfair, but considering the fact that I've been waiting for 2-3 years for the Blue Jays to officially ascend and they haven't, I have a little bit more speculation about them, whether fair or not, than I do about the Mariners pen.
I've seen Romano make mistakes. I'm
Yeah.
biased. I do like the Mariners pen. I like their pitching staff. I like Scott Service using them.
Yeah.
This will be the one where I think this is the one where I think baseball purists are going to be like, you fucking morons. Look how much deeper the Blue Jays are, this and that. Mize only's given up 1 home run this year. That's why
he's been fantastic.
3. But I will take the Mariners. We have an all Blue Jays infield. We have an all Mariners outfield. We have an all Mariners pitching staff. And I am taking Scott Service as my manager. And I just like Scott Service a lot. This goes back to being a Cubs fan when he was our backup catcher for the Cubs in the late 90s. I enjoyed the Scott Service games for some reason. He's turned out to be a fantastic manager, if for no other reason than the second half that they've sprung coming out of hosting the All-Star break. And all the hoopla that must have been going on in Seattle and trying to keep that team focused so that they can come out and they've just maximized and have rolled through their potential the second half.
Yep. I did a video, it was 4 years ago, it was before Barstool, when I was probably 70 pounds heavier. And I said I was watching the Mariners, and they were, I think, close to last place at the time, and they played a Tigers team that was god-awful. And I remember saying, and I could find the video somewhere, there's something about the way this Mariners team plays that I think the future is bright there. And I really think that when you're talking, there's so many intangibles that go into what does and doesn't make a good manager. But I think that just having a fundamental team and controlling the things you can control regardless of talent is kind of step one. And I remember feeling that way with the Mariners a while back. I think he's done a fine job with the management of his pitching staff. These guys have stayed durable. And look, I think that one of the big issues that an organization like Seattle ran into in previous years is that when you go 20 plus years without making the playoffs, it's hard to teach these guys how to win at the big league level. I'm going through it with the Tigers right now, where it's none of these guys know how to win. None of these guys, Riley Green's never been a part of a good team. Spencer Torkelson's never been a part of a good team. I think establishing culture is wildly important. And even with things going sideways the way they did for Seattle the first 100 games of this season, it shows the kind of clubhouse culture that they have, that nothing ever seemed, there was no finger pointing, nobody got rattled. And ultimately, I mean, on the other side of this, I'm just whatever about John Schneider. I just think that I think the Blue Jays have really made a mistake here. I'm not a guy who believes that managers are the end all be all in baseball. But I really think with a roster this talented, dude, guys would have walked to Toronto to manage that team. And the fact that they've just kind of, we'll handle it internally. I think that one of the big reasons why they had that solid run of success 2015, 2016 is the players really like John Gibbons. And John Gibbons' attitude reflected the attitude in that clubhouse. I don't really think you have great vibes coming off there. Now, look, They get on a hot streak. Who gives a shit? It won't matter. But if we're just comparing the two right now, I think you got to go Service.
I think MLB managers are a lot like NFL kickers. The historic, awesome ones. They're just legends in their own game. And then you just know the names where you're like, all right, dude, this guy lost it. He shouldn't be out there. But then there's also those.
Yeah, so the guys who tore their ACLs celebrating a field goal type of shit. Yeah, the Martin Grammaticas of the world.
I was going to say, shout out to the Grammatica family. Great kicking family. One of the great kicking families in the history of the sport.
Yeah, Super Bowl champion.
There's an element of truth to that, though. There's so much parity and normalcy and averageness, and you expect him to hit at 40 and in. You expect him to hit at 45 and in. You expect him to make the right bullpen decisions and to put the decent lineup card together. And then there's somewhere you just scratch your head and you go, how the fuck did we get here? And so John Schneider very quickly has trended into this category of, and he won me over emotionally throwing BP to Vlad Jr. in the All-Star break. That was great because he wasn't supposed to be there and he went out to Seattle. So I know there's part of me as a baseball guy, I'm like, that's fucking sick. He's probably got great relationships with his boys. They probably like playing for him. But for whatever reason, that could be a juggernaut where Brandon Hyde got his juggernaut going. They can't get these guys going. And at some point, John Schneider's got to fall on the sword at some point.
Yeah.
He'll be the first guy to go.
If they miss the playoffs, he's out.
Has to be.
Yeah.
Has to be. This roster and how well Chapman's played and how well Kiermaier's played, where the front office is like, we gave you great players to manage this year. You can't just. Are we comfortable with this? I like this.
I'm very comfortable with it. Yeah, I think this will lead to a lot of good discussion. These teams are evenly matched. Mariners have obviously been crazy hot. I think we made the right moves. Yeah.
This is roster wars. I like this segment, and I want to do this segment with like we talked last time. I want to pull this segment out in the off season for Tigers and Cubs and other different shit. The other thing I would be interested in is I would like to moderate and have you verse someone, and then I can kind of dispel who I think made the right point, and then pick.
You know what I think would be a good offseason when I was thinking about this, literally on my run today? I think with the Mets being what they're potentially going to be in 2024 and the expectations being where I think they might be for my Tigers, I think there could be a legitimate Tigers-Mets discussion between me and Clemmer for next season. Especially if the Mets
Torkelson over Alonso yet, pal. So just so you know, you're no Tork over Alonso.
No, if we get August 2023 Torkelson, then yes. But no, I'm with you on that one. But I think that with them being kind of open about the window of opportunity and the fact that they have no fucking pitching staff outside of Senga, like that could be an interesting one. I was gonna say if the Tigers win more games than the Mets next year, Clemmer might have to get tattoo number 2, but technically number 3. He's got the Ninja Turtle one. But yeah, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that on Sunday. That's our power ranking. That's the time when we sit down, we record our power rankings. We're going to do that on Sunday. This is Friday. This is Barstool Baseball. This is Roster Wars, Mariners versus Blue Jays. The Mariners I think they take this one 7-4 with the Blue Jays sweeping the infield.
Yeah.
Really surprising stuff. So if you guys enjoy this segment, please obviously continue to share some feedback. The reason we did Mariners Blue Jays is because that was the best recommendation that we got. We're just going to keep firing these things up as the playoffs get in so that we're in tune. We're ready to go for the playoffs. It was great. By the way, last thing, it was great for everybody to get together again. I want to re-echo these comments from the Barstool Award Show because I know our Sunday, when we sit down to this Sunday Power Rankings, it's going to be the best. It will be, without a doubt, the best show that we've cut all year, and that's what we're working towards. I'm excited to do that. Yeah,
I'm excited for the chaos.
It's a great Mincy shirt. If you're watching this on YouTube, obviously subscribe. Chris is wearing a classic Wake Up with Mincy. He's back. More on that later. For now, this is Barstool Baseball. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.